Welcome to The Talk on the Street, a public affairs program produced through the facilities of the Glasgow Electric Plant Board. The Talk on the Street features topics of interest to viewers in Glasgow and Barron County and is seen exclusively on the Glasgow Electric Plant Board's Cable 6. Tonight's host is Ronnie Ellis, longtime reporter for the Glasgow Daily Times, and is now the Frankfurt correspondent for CNHI News Service.
Good evening. Alcohol sales in restaurants in Glasgow. Is it going to be Glasgow salvation or its damnation? Will Glasgow turn into Sodom or Gomorrah, or Manhattan or Silicon Valley, or perhaps neither? That's what we're going to discuss tonight with our guest, Steve Newberry, who is CEO and President of Commonwealth Broadcasting, and in part of his role for appearing tonight, he's also the chairman of the Industrial Development Economic Authority, which everybody knows as IDEA. Local attorney Walter Davis is with us. He is opposed to the measure on the November 6th ballot. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do want to say one thing real quickly for our viewers on behalf of the Electric Plant Board. Electric Plant Board and Talk on the Street aren't pushing one side or the other of this issue. It's our desire to provide viewers and voters an informed debate by spokesmen for each side, and hopefully some factual information that will help you make your decision. I thought we'd just start, Steve, if we can start with you, by asking you briefly to tell the viewers why we should do this in Glasgow, why we should pass this measure.
I'll be glad to, Ronnie, and I should, just in the interest of letting everyone know, that I'm the pinch hitter. Judge Henry Dickinson was scheduled to do this and was a bit under the weather and asked me to substitute for him. And the other thing that I would say is I'm not a resident of the city of Glasgow. I spend most of my waking hours in Glasgow. That's where my business is, but I lay my head on the pillow every night in Highsville. So I'm not eligible to vote on that, and I want everybody to know that, but if I could, I certainly would.
Well, I have known people out your way to claim that Glasgow is simply a suburb of Highsville.
Well, we don't all think that way, but Highsville certainly has its own pride. Why now, I think, is the question that you ask. And I would tell you that having been involved in economic development issues here in the community since 1992, when I became the full-time economic development director, so for the past 15 years, I've seen a tremendous change in the economic development methods, recruiting efforts, the expectations from companies that are coming into the community. And I will tell you that were we voting on this 10 years ago, I would be on Walter's side. Things have changed enough in the past 10 years that I have come to the belief that we as a community have to revisit this. We voted on it in 2000. We defeated it pretty soundly in 2000. So the question is, why now? Why are we revisiting this? But since that time, two things have happened. Well, actually, prior to 2000, the legislature adopted laws that allow for limited sales in restaurants only. Up until that point, it was a wet community or a dry community. Here we're talking about limited sales in restaurants. Secondly, since 2000, the following communities, virtually every community that we compete with for economic development opportunities has adopted this. Murray, Moorhead, Danville, Harrodsburg, Georgetown, LaGrange, Franklin, London, and Elizabethtown have all adopted this measure. We're the 28th largest community in the state. We're the largest community in the state that does not allow any type of limited sales. And we'll get into this, I'm sure, over the next 30 minutes. I want to give Walter ample time to respond to the question, but there are certainly economic reasons of what we have to do as a community to prepare for the future.
And you're right, we will get into those, but I want to give Walter an opportunity to explain briefly why we shouldn't do this in 2007.
Well, Ronnie, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come to be on your program. I've already confessed I was a big fan of Mr. Bergman when he was.
So was I.
When he chaired this program, and Ewell was a good friend and a fellow attorney, and I haven't followed it as closely since you've been doing it, but I appreciate the fact that you're still doing it. And I think my being here roughly probably came about because I saw you at the crafts fair, and we got into a discussion. This came up, and you asked me if I would come and be on your program as a spokesperson. I'm not on the steering committee. I'm not a co-chairman. But I've watched the issue over the years. And again, I think the time is not right for the same reasons that it wasn't right in 86 and 83 and 2000. I just don't feel that our community needs it. There was a wonderful letter to the editor of the Daily Times today, Mr. James Trigg Pace, and most everyone in the community probably knows Mr. Pace. He's now retired, but he went through and just delineated all of a whole series of good things that have happened in this community over the years, things that we've done for economic development, to bring the Donnellys, to bring the Acabonos, to bring even industries that have left, like Johnson Controls, and they left for reasons beyond our control. But and just as recently as 2 months ago or so, we announced a 500-job call center. All of this, Ronnie, has been done without the benefit of alcohol sales. And yes, we may be more competitive, but we've done very well on our own. And I think there are a whole bunch of things, and I appreciate the work Steve has done over the years in economic development. Scott Luth, our most recent developer, has been like a bulldog getting the call center here. And there are a lot of things we can do. This is a minute thing, in my opinion, that affects economic development. And I think the question becomes, do you weigh the positives that might come, the promises of things that might come, against what I consider to be the obvious negatives in the area of cost and of family and of example for children? My children are all grown now and gone. Steve has a young son, and what our community says to him about whether or not you ought to consider using alcohol, beverage alcohol, I think is important. And I think that's the reason personally that I take a stand opposed to it. I'm not speaking necessarily for the committee that's out there that's formed, but I will give both what I consider to be my views and a spectrum of other views that relate to that.
And Ronnie, if I could just add, I think Walter brings up some very good points. There are two issues, though, that from an economic development standpoint, from a broader, first of all, if this debate were about whether we were going to have alcohol in our community versus no alcohol in our community, would be an entirely different debate than what we really are having, because there's a ton of alcohol in this community already. We have people driving up and down the roads with it. We have people that have it at their homes. We have people with wedding celebrations. We have high school kids having parties with it. I am absolutely for strict enforcement of the laws. A lot of the troubles that come along with alcohol, we already have those negatives in this community. And what I would say from the example to my 9-year-old son would be teaching him the responsible way to choose as an adult. When he is 21, does he choose to partake, does he choose not to partake, but to be prepared for that. And Walter, I appreciate the kind words about the economic development. We have had a good track record, but what we have not been able to really attract as well as we need to are the front office, the white collar jobs. There's nobody in Barron County that I have any more respect for than Mr. Pace. You're exactly right. It was a wonderful letter in the paper today. And we were able to attract the front office jobs at Donnelly Corporation and the front office jobs at the Dana Corporation. But in recent years, we're having a very difficult time attracting senior management, design, engineering, those type jobs to our community. We get a lot of the assembly operations. But we have had great difficulty in recruiting the higher paying technical jobs because there is a concern about their ability to recruit people to live in our community. And I can elaborate on that at the appropriate time.
Well, I want to ask about some of those, but before we do, I also wanted to ask, we started out with this question, why now? There are large swaths of this country where local option is not an option, right. But it is in Kentucky. And it does seem that this question has failed on numerous occasions.